Last year, one of my favorite yoga teachers posted this. She was referring to the radicalization of New Age and yoga/wellness groups in 2020 due to the increase of COVID-19 conspiracies and elections that last year brought. If you watched my problem with New Age spirituality video, you may remember a brief moment where I touched base on conspiracies. I mentioned a new podcast called Conspirituality that had just come out and now has about 50 episodes on the subject of conspirituality, which is essentially the link between New Age spirituality and conspiracy theories. I'm Alex, welcome back to my channel where I like to discuss whatever I want. If you like this video, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and even share to maybe help me reach my goal of 1,000 subscribers. I worked really hard on this video and there is a lot to unpack, so let's just jump right into it. The term conspirituality was coined in 2011 in a study called the Emergence of Conspirituality, which was done by two sociologists, Charlotte Ward and David Voas. They started to notice that people with New Age spirituality beliefs were prone to conspiratorial thinking. Ward and Voas defined conspirituality as a politico-spiritual philosophy based on two core convictions. One core to conspiracy theories and the other rooted in New Age beliefs. The first being a secret group covertly controls or is trying to control the political and social order. Two being that humanity is undergoing a paradigm shift in consciousness. Proponents will often believe that the best strategy of dealing with this totalitarian new world order is to act in accordance with an awakened new paradigm worldview. With the image of people like Jake Angeli, known as the Q shaman in animal horns and fur, leading an attack on the Capitol, conspirituality has become a lot more than just a topic on a research paper. It has become our shared reality. The basic definition for conspiracy theories is a belief that some covert but influential organization is responsible for a circumstance or an event. But a conspiracy theory is not simply a conspiracy, which is referring to two or more people involved in a covert plan. In contrast, the term conspiracy theory refers to hypothesized conspiracies that have very specific characteristics. So, in other words, conspiracies do and have existed in the history of the world. However, conspiracy theories have a negative connotation because they demonstrate the following characteristics. I'm just going to read them off of my list here, but conspiracy theories usually resist falsification and run based on circular reasoning. So usually and ironically, any evidence proving or disproving the conspiracy only tends to reinforce it as evidence of the truth. Quoting an article that I'll link below, the epistemic strategy of conspiracy theories has been called cascade logic. So each time new evidence becomes available, a conspiracy theory is able to dismiss it by claiming that even more people must be a part of that cover-up. Any information that contradicts the conspiracy theory is suggested to be disinformation by the alleged conspiracy. Usually, the conspiracy theory starts becoming a matter of your personal faith and a way of living rather than something that can be proved or disproved. Conspiracy theorists often share in opposition to the mainstream consensus among those people, so people such as scientists and historians who are qualified to evaluate the accuracy. The conspiracies usually encompass a great ambition for control over a nation, economy, or political system like world domination, and they will usually be suspicious of all government agencies or private groups, suggesting that conspiracies are unrealistically successful and that groups of conspirators, such as bureaucracies, can act with near perfect competence and secrecy. Conspiracies usually emerge from a pattern of connecting the dots and seeing patterns where there may not be any, something which experts call illusory pattern perception. Instead of trying to explain one thing, usually conspiracy theorists will try to explain everything by discovering these connections across all aspects of life, with everything usually being very black and white, evil and good. One of the most widely confirmed facts about conspiracy theories is that belief in a single conspiracy theory tends to promote belief in other unrelated conspiracy theories as well, and this even applies to ones that may contradict each other. This is usually because underneath all of these small contradicting conspiracy theories, there is an underlying belief that something is being covered up, and that kind of ties all of those beliefs together. So, like a common example of this would be believing that Princess Diana faked her death while also believing that she was killed by a secret element of the British government. So, where did conspiracy theories come from? Philosophers attribute the popularity and the growth of conspiracy theories in the US to the Cold War and counterculture rejection of authority in the 1950s and 60s. They state that among both the left wing and right wing, there remains a willingness to use real events such as Soviet plots, inconsistencies in the Warren Report, and the 9/11 attacks to support the existence of unverified and ongoing large-scale conspiracies. The Watergate scandal has also been used plenty to bestow legitimacy upon other conspiracy theories. In 2020, a comedian and environmentalist on TikTok went viral for creating a conspiracy chart that has layers to it, to say the least, and I kind of want to go through it quickly because I feel like it has most, if not all, conspiracy theories on there. So as you can see, like I said, there was layers to this, and on the bottom she starts off with things that actually happen. So MK Ultra, NSA mass surveillance, the FBI, I guess, apparently spying on John Lennon. Had no idea about that. And then the second line, we're reaching speculation line, I guess she titles this "We Have Questions," and in this layer she includes UFOs, Princess Diana's death, JFK's assassination, Epstein not killing himself, etc. And then above the leaving reality line, we have the unequivocally false but mostly harmless conspiracies. They include conspiracies like Avril Lavigne being replaced, mattress firm conspiracy, Loch Ness Monster, Bigfoot, Greta Thunberg being a time traveler, alien abductions, etc. And then above the science denial line, we have the dangerous to yourself and others. This one includes anti-vaccination, global warming being a hoax, COVID-19 made in a lab, chemtrails, 5G. Above the anti-Semitic point of no return, she has the level called world ruled by supreme shadow elites. Once you believe one, you usually believe most. This one has Pizzagate, Hollow Earth, Satanic Cult Panic, George Soros, Illuminati, QAnon, Deep State, Elders of Zion, White Genocide, Holocaust Denial, Reptilian Overlords, Flat Earth, etc. And we will get into why these are so harmful to society a little bit later in the video. I want to address what to me is like the elephant in the room, and that is not only distrust towards institutions, but distrust in science. Distrust in science, from things like climate change to fracking, abortion to genetically modified foods, is something that is actually pretty prominent in both left and right wing parties in the US. So how did we get to this point of distrusting something so revolutionary to our human species? Andrew Jewett is the author of Science Democracy. He has taught at Harvard, Vanderbilt, Yale, and more, and in his article titled "How Americans Came to Distrust Science," he writes, "The Christian right has targeted myriad scientific theories and innovations as part of its culture war against modern liberalism. Yet the rise of the Christian right cannot fully explain phenomenon such as the breadth of anti-vaccination sentiment and concerns about genetic engineering. A second narrative, common amongst working scientists and scholarly interpreters, holds that a broad-gauged revolt against science took place in the wake of the 1960s. That period brought not only the conservative backlash, but also a host of countercultural impulses, including New Age spirituality and belief in UFOs, astrology, and the paranormal. The era's political movements also fueled opposition as a new generation of critics identified science as an ideological tool of the establishment. plummeting levels of trust in institutions, especially after Watergate. In other words, science really started to become a political matter when it became linked to institutions and establishments. And not to mention that to a lot of spiritual and religious people, science directly contradicts a lot of their beliefs. It just simply does not explain who they are and what they're here for. So why should we trust it? Well, first of all, science has been right about most things, from the structure of the universe to the relativity of time and space to the planetary positions. But let's talk about the most common answer to this question of why we should trust science, which is the scientific method. That answer is actually only half right. Scientific methods are constantly evolving and changing with the times. And this is a good thing because even false theories can yield true results. And conversely, if the experiment fails, it doesn't always mean that the theory is wrong. It could be an underlying factor of the experiment. A scientific claim is never accepted as truth until it has gone through an extremely lengthy process of scientific evaluation by peers. I'll try to keep the explanation pretty short and quick, but the process generally starts as pretty informal, usually discussing ideas with colleagues and postdocs, shopping your ideas around at workshops or conferences, and revising and editing as you collect data, and then finally submitting it to a scientific journal. Up until this point, the process is usually pretty friendly, but the next part is a lot tougher. Editors of the scientific journal will send off the paper to reviewers who are also experts in the subject, whose job it is to find errors and inadequacies in the claim. This process can sometimes take years, especially if the claim is huge and significant to society. Theories can be retracted at the face of new scientific evidence, of course, but statistically, scientific consensus is usually never wrong. So a lot of people who have a distrust in science will often picture the process to be very sinister, done by a team that's publishing something as fact in order to push an agenda, when in reality that's not what the process looks like at all. There is no one judge. It's a very collective process, and this is another huge reason why we need diversity and representation in the science world. Our society depends on the knowledge of experts in their field, whether that be doctors, teachers, psychologists. If anything, trust in science is the most important in my opinion, because the livelihood of our species, planet, and future generations relies on it. For decades now, psychologists and sociologists have been studying the psychology of why people fall for conspiracy theories, as well as the consequences that they have on our society. Karen Douglas is a professor of social psychology at the University of Kent. She focuses on beliefs in conspiracy theories and their consequences. Her research paper, The Psychology of Conspiracy Theories, in 2017 has been cited in a lot of the articles that I've come across in my research. In that article, she cites three main motives that drives people to believe in conspiracy theories. The motives are epistemic, which essentially just refers to the need for knowledge and certainty; existential motives, which refers to the need for people to feel safe and secure in the world that they live in; and lastly, social motives, which refers to the need to feel good about yourself in relation to others, or the need for uniqueness to stand out by, attaining an exclusive piece of information or knowledge. Also worth noting that uncertain times breed conspiratorial thinking, things like war, terrorism, pandemics. So these are some of the most common characteristics of why people in general fall for conspiracy theories, but I want to go a little bit deeper and really dive into why it is that people in the New Age spirituality movement oftentimes believe things that are directly contradicting to a lot of what they preach. Now, the podcast that I mentioned earlier, Conspirituality, does have an episode on this called Why Do Spiritual People Fall for Conspiracy? One of the co-hosts, Matthew Remski, goes on to list his three main culprits, being appeal to authority, pseudoscience / cherry-picking studies, and confirmation bias / echo chambers. All of which I very much agree with. However, I just want to add my own take and dive in a little bit deeper, as I feel like those can be applied to non-New Age spiritual people as well. So when he says appeal to authority, I believe he's referring to the logical fallacy I do believe this is true because a lot of people in the New Age spirituality movement tend to have that devotional attitude. They want a guru to devote themselves to and to trust and to believe in. However, the way that I see this happening is a lot of these teachers and spiritual teachers are now claiming that the knowledge that they're sharing is not really coming from them. However, it's being channeled from a higher source, God, divine, an angel, etc. So I think that if you can spew this long enough, people will start to believe this.
The information that I am providing today is coming from higher dimensional consciousnesses, and they provide me that larger perspective, energetic, and that's what I'm sharing with you. And this is the Galactic Federation of Light. That's what the humans call these beings. It was in March when I received the information that Donald Trump, our United States president, is a massive and powerful light worker. I have been digesting information from my guides about what this light worker in human form, looking like the name Donald Trump, has been doing for the entire human collective. Greed, sexual misconduct in a way that we can't even imagine in satanic rituals, mind control in a way that would blow our mind.
One starts to believe that if a person is being channeled information from a higher source, then it must be true. I've seen this happening a lot recently with people who claim that their souls are ancient aliens and that they're able to communicate with their peers and other planets. Science and cherry picking, I think that that is a prominent issue just amongst all conspiratorial thinking. It's very likely that a person who claims to distrust science will still cherry pick and use science to back up their claims only when it's convenient to them. I talked a little bit about confirmation bias in my New Age spirituality video, but if you don't remember, confirmation bias is essentially the tendency to search for, interpret, favor, and recall information in a way that confirms or supports one's prior beliefs or value. When a person wants something to be true, they will seek out information and patterns, signs, and omens to confirm this reality. Innocent people can fall victim to developing this type of tunnel vision because there are factors that are out of our control that plays into echo chambers and confirmation bias. So for example, social media's algorithm, which shows you more of what you have already seen, or being raised in a ultra religious household. Now, New Age spirituality, as I've mentioned before, is pretty ambiguous and personal. However, it usually builds off of the following core beliefs, which is actually key to any conspiracy theory, coincidentally. Everything is connected, nothing happens without a reason, and nothing is as it appears. I actually believe that these core beliefs have a huge role in why New Agers have been falling for conspiracies. These core beliefs are rooted in the appeal of conspiratorial thinking. It makes your personal and life in general seem less likely to be random. Spirituality is largely about connection. And as a side note, I think it's safe to say that a lot of these conspiracy theories and a lot of New Agers in general like to be and thrive in community settings, even if they may not resonate at first with every fundamental belief. And connection, although for some may just mean feeling a connection with yourself or with someone else or with something, over time this can manifest itself as the urge to connect things as patterns that otherwise might just be happening randomly.
Of course, it's all connected.
I think this directly correlates with the hunger for meaning that a lot of New Agers have. I mentioned this also in my last video, what is a life without meaning and what is a life without purpose? To a lot of people, nothing. There is a common theme to make sense of evil as well. I used to hear this a lot while being immersed in the New Age world. Things like Hitler and Trump are just here for a larger evolutionary purpose and that they're light workers doing the hard work, depicting them as some sort of savior. Heard me right. Hitler, a savior. This type of divine fallacy results in idolizing evil people and appeal to certain devotional spiritual people's impulse to worship a guru. So it's no surprise that conspiracy theories thrive when a community is able to convince a lot of people at once and gain public support. A lot of these conspiracy theories are driven by people, not facts, often relying on eyewitness testimonies from respected people in communities. I think this is a common theme not only in New Age spirituality, but in religion as well. But the ironic thing is that although they thrive in community settings, a lot of the motives are truly individualistic. Like, let me explain a little bit further. In my New Age and self-help video, I talk a little bit about individualism and how it plays a role in the desires of people in the New Age communities, to the point where you will oftentimes see people manifesting stuff for their own personal needs rather than for the collective as a whole. If the law of attraction is so true and so powerful, why are we so self-indulgent in the law of attraction? Why are we focused on manifesting things like wealth and boyfriends and cars and houses? And why not for other communities and other marginalized groups and countries? Another example of spiritual narcissism is saying things like, oh, we're in a mass awakening and the government will be overturned soon, when in reality there are hundreds of other governments in this world and countries that are struggling with measles and poverty and access to healthcare are probably not really considering that to be much of a mass awakening. Mask deniers are probably not thinking about the community or the collective as well. They're probably mostly just consumed with their freedom rights over public health matters. People want to be able to go to restaurants and bars when they want to without being told that it's bad. People don't want to believe that individual actions can cause climate change because then it would require them to change some aspects of their lives. Are you noticing the theme here? Although not all conspiratorial thinking is driven by individualism, I think that there is a theme of individualism and narcissism in conspiracy thinking. So I had this one other point as my last point before we move on, and it is the need to seek truth, except your truth is intuitive. I mentioned this in my New Age video. There is an emphasis on trusting your intuition in New Age spirituality and yoga and wellness in general. Your intuition is usually based on patterns that you've been able to identify in your past, and excessively promoting the trust of intuition can prevent people from having the cognitive dissonance to use reason and logic when making a decision, and even to oppose a belief if it just doesn't seem right to them.
Release the labels, duality, right and wrong, good and bad, left, right, Democrat, Republican, and just see what resonates.
There are two examples that I want to jump into. The first one is the link between the New Age and yoga communities and QAnon. Now, I don't want to spend too much time on the specifics of QAnon because there's a few great YouTubers who I think do a really awesome job of breaking it all down, as well as a docuseries on HBO Max if you guys want to give that a watch. However, I will just briefly describe the movement. So QAnon, or simply Q, is a discredited American far-right conspiracy theory alleging that a cabal of satanic, cannibalistic pedophiles run a global child sex trafficking ring and conspired against former President Donald Trump during his term in office. So I encourage you to do some research on the roots of QAnon yourself. It's some really interesting and dark stuff, but what I do want to note is that it was started in October 2017 by an anonymous user on a website called 4chan, which is similar to Reddit except with less censorship, and it also has anti-Semitic roots to it. QAnon has played a large role in the spread of conspiracy theories in 2020, as well as a list of incidents that are Q related, some of the popular ones just being the attack on the Capitol, as well as the time that an armored truck stopped traffic next to the Hoover Dam. So QAnon itself has been around for several years. However, due to uncertain times last year and because of the pandemic, it really became mainstream. So it's not news that the yoga and wellness world is riddled with conspiracies, and a new phenomenon was identified by a researcher at Concordia University amongst the yoga and wellness world deemed as pastel QAnon. Pastel QAnon uses a feminine coded aesthetic of an often pastel color palette, aspirational imagery, font, design language, and phrases used widely in marketing of products and services aimed at women. They will often feed conspiracies that are sensitive to these women, such as child trafficking, health-related issues, anti-vaccination, all while using language that appeals to that community, such as mass awakening, enlightenment. An example of this was the Save the Children movement that QAnon hijacked last summer in order to dodge the Instagram and social media algorithms and reach a wider audience. Not only did it do this, but it also ended up being really harmful as it flooded the hashtags of Save the Children. Essentially, it drew in a lot of people to QAnon without them even realizing it was QAnon. Extraordinarily frustrating, said Lisa Goldblatt Grace, co-founder and executive director of My Life, My Choice, an anti-trafficking nonprofit. We've worked so hard for the last 18 years to shift the narrative and have people understand this is happening in our communities. QAnon instead gives folks this incredibly sensationalized other to fear and be angry about. In reality, child trafficking in the US doesn't look like a bunch of Hollywood and DC elites performing satanic rituals on children that they stole from suburban playgrounds. Instead, kids who are sexually exploited are often poor, children of color, immigrants, or some combination of the three, and they've often been in the child welfare system or run away from home. I think the example that I was most excited to get into for this video is JP Sears, or Awaken with JP. He is an internet personality. His channel has accumulated over 200 million views, and he's well known for his satirical videos on different wellness trends. Since he's made his living off of mocking new age and spirituality trends such as essential oils, it may come to a surprise to you that JP has not only become or always has been the very thing that he ridicules, but he is now using his massive platform online to promote discredited conspiracy theories and spread misinformation. He calls masks face suffocators, he sows distrust in journalists, he mentions 5G in context of coronavirus and ironically wishes he could get 2 microchips instead of just 1. But when you look into the history of JP's interest in conspiracies, it's actually not newfound. JP is an emotional healing coach and received his certification from the Checks Institute, whose courses teaches things like how to align your chakras, also promotes unscientific concepts like detoxing and boosting your immunity, which I do have a video on, by the way, if you want to watch it after this one. He has essentially always mocked wellness fads while endorsing them. Some of those endorsements even being magnesium and supplements. During the COVID-19 pandemic in July 2020, Sears appeared at a rally in Austin, Texas, protesting COVID-19 pandemic restrictions. He was also recently censored on YouTube for spreading unfounded conspiracy theories and discrediting public health measures against COVID-19. Sears has made claims that vitamin D provides protection against COVID-19. And get this, in November 2020, Sears joins Mike Willis, the producer of the documentary Plandemic, anti-vaccination promoter Del Bigtree, and Donald Trump's ex-wife, along with a big crowd to pray for Trump's win in Texas. The list of negative impacts that conspiracy theories has on society truly goes on. From political, environmental, technological, science and health related to social, emotional, and relationship related. Particular research suggests that conspiracy theories are associated with political apathy, support for non-normative political action, climate denial, vaccine refusal, prejudice, crime, violence, disengagement in the workplace, and reluctance to adhere to COVID-19 recommendations. At this point, there is quite literally an emotional support group on Reddit for those who have lost loved ones to QAnon called Qanon casualties. In 2018, Europe experienced its biggest measles outbreak since it was declared eliminated, with 59 Romanians, many being children, dying of measles. Physicians and doctors attribute this to the largely growing anti-vaccination movement prominent in Romania. In 2019, over 1,200 cases of measles were reported in the U.S., being the greatest number of cases reported in the U.S. since 1992, and the majority of cases were amongst communities that were unvaccinated. It's not a surprise to me that Hitler used his anti-Semitic conspiracy theories to gain trust amongst his people. I'm a huge believer that a lot of international conspiracy theories breeds ultranationalism, which then breeds xenophobia, and it's not a coincidence to me why a lot of people who believe in conspiracies never actually do anything to fight for justice. Historically, conspiracy theories have been closely linked to prejudice, witch hunts, wars, and genocides. They are often strongly believed by the perpetrators of terrorist attacks, and they were used as justification by Timothy McVeigh and Anders Breivik, as well as by governments such as Nazi Germany, the Soviet Union, and Turkey. AIDS denialism by the government of South Africa, motivated by conspiracy theories, caused an estimated 330,000 deaths from AIDS, while belief in conspiracy theories about genetically modified foods led the government of Zambia to reject food aid during a famine at a time when 3 million people in the country were suffering from hunger. Conspiracy theories are a significant obstacle to improvements in public health, encouraging opposition to vaccination and water fluoridation, among other things, and have been linked to outbreaks of vaccine-preventable diseases. Other effects of conspiracy theories include reduced trust in scientific evidence, radicalization and ideological reinforcement of extremist groups, and negative consequences for the economy. Conspiracy theories are a fundamental component of a wide range of radicalized and extremist groups where they may play an important role in reinforcing the ideology. So what can we do about this? We've reached this point where the censorship has really reinforced a lot of these conspiracies. And I do have mixed feelings on the concept of censorship in general. That's out of my control. And I think what is in our control is those that are close to us, our peers, our friends, and our community. As tempting as it can be to just block or ridicule someone who believes these things, I don't really find it to be that productive. I think it's important, especially if you're close enough to the person, to try to engage. But before you do, humble yourself a little bit. Nobody, not even me or you, is above conspiratorial thinking. I can bet you that you have been influenced of some sort by fake news at one point in your life. So some experts and moderators for the subreddit Change My Mind have come up with a list of 10 strategies to debunk conspiracy theories convincingly. 2 are methods that I actually found super helpful. So you can use the fact fallacy fact approach, a method first proposed by linguist George Lakoff. State what's true, debunk the conspiracy theory, and then state what's true again. For example, if you're talking to someone who believes the 5G conspiracy theory, you could structure your argument as: coronavirus is an airborne virus, which means it is passed by sneezing, coughing, or particles. Because viruses are not transmitted via radio waves, coronavirus, which is an airborne virus, can't be carried by 5G. Yes, it's repetitive, but it reinforces facts and points out where the conspiracy theory doesn't work. Number 6 is to use the Socratic method. In other words, use questions to help others probe their own argument and see if it stands up. Stuart Johnson, a mod on Change My View, says that this is by far the most effective approach he's found, as it challenges people to come up with sources and defend their position for themselves. The best way to change someone's view is to make them feel like they've uncovered it themselves, he says. That means engaging in back and forth questions and answers until you hit a dead end, gently pointing out inconsistencies. Studies show that people often think that they know more about a policy than they let on, and the Socratic method can reveal those inconsistencies. Research shows this tactic can prevent one party from feeling attacked. For many people, at a certain point, conspiratorial thinking becomes a part of their faith, so you may not be able to change their mind with fact, evidence-based thinking. Remember that a lot of times, the reason why people believe in conspiracy theories is because they essentially just want to feel safer and more certain in this world. I've also read some advice that another way to help a loved one get out of a deep rabbit hole is just to help them engage in some of the activities that they used to do before they got into conspiracies, reminding them of who their identity was before they became a conspiracy theorist. There is often a huge discomfort that comes with the cognitive dissonance, so if you can just frame it as we're in this together, let's learn about this together, instead of by trying to outsmart them, then you'll most likely have a larger success rate at communicating your stance. Before I wrap things up, I do have a favor to ask. If you can comment below letting me know your experience with anyone who believes in conspiracy theories that may be close to you, or just leaving me a suggestion for my next topic of discussion. I would love to read your requests. In the meantime, you can feel free to follow my Instagram. It's a little bit more personal, but just a way to stay in the loop until I post again. Thank you for watching, and I will see you guys next time.